We've got the next defensive tackle off the board. It is Bryan Bresee to the New Orleans Saints. My number 3 graded defensive tackle. Fantastic athlete. Highly recruited kid. Here to react to the picks. We don't just have one New Orleans pundit to react to this. We've got David Grubb, Believe in Saints, to react to this. But we also got Mr. Blake Ruffino, who's been with us the whole night to react to this.
Who dat?
He made me pause before the last pick, by the way, just so he could hear it, which I understand. But David, first, I want to get to you. You were talking about how this doesn't really make a lot of sense for them, where there's other needs. And I was saying to you before we started recording, I would have got Myles Murphy, his teammate, who's on the board, who is a
Myles
more bendy.
Murphy was taken by the Bengals.
Myles Murphy was taken by the Bengals before or after? That was after.
Before.
It was taking the pick before. Yeah.
I'm
right there, 28.
I'm tripping. Besides the point, Bryan Bresee, though, is this guy, and we're wondering if this pick makes sense. David, your thoughts on the pick?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Saints lost out on 2 guys that they really wanted when Maisie Smith went off the board. There was a lot of talk about the Saints looking at him. And then, you lose Myles Murphy, a potential edge rusher, which is a big need for the Saints, who did not generate a lot of sacks last year, particularly from a team that relies on the D-line to generate the pressures. Look, the Saints lost their entire D-tackle group basically to the rest of the division or the rest of the conference. They either went to Minnesota, Carolina, or Atlanta, so you don't have any experience up front. This is a team that gave up 130 yards on the ground per game last year, got out-physicaled in a number of games. So when you take a Bryan Bresee, yes, he's an athlete and has all the physical tools you're looking for, except for maybe, he's a little short on the arms. But D-line, if he's a freak athlete, he can get by with those things. But he needs time. He needs polish. He needs refinement. And we've seen the Saints take some D linemen last couple with Peyton, with a couple other guys who have not developed with the kind of rate that they've wanted to. So to me, we're in a need. This was not the best way to fill it, I don't think. And then at the same time, it goes against the Saints' history, which is if they're drafted late in the first round, they tend to just take the best player on the board, regardless of position. Even if it's a duplicate of something that they already have. We've seen it with Deuce McAllister. We've seen it, another number of other positions. And I think after those guys, I'm surprised maybe that they didn't even go backwards into the second round and maybe grab a Hendon Hooker that they've been attached to for a number of weeks.
Look, I think that there's only one concern here, Joe. So look, everybody, if you have a pulse on the Saints, and David knows this, everybody's been projecting Bryan to the Saints. A lot of early hype was Hooker, but that was never going to happen, especially after Carr. But the one thing that nobody's talking about at the current moment, I see from Saints fans, at least on Twitter, he is injury prone. Okay, and that is the only issue that you're going to have with him. When he's healthy, he gets back to 2020. He's one of, if not the most dominant defensive tackles in this draft. Which guy are you going to get? The Saints have not had a good history with guys that have had injuries in the past. We'll see. I think it's a good pick, but I just worry about injuries with him. And the Saints, Michael Thomas, name them. They've had injuries in the past, and the staff has not been able to put guys back on the field.
And the guys on the defensive line, too, the guys that they just left, though, were all uber talented guys that were supposed to be Pro Bowlers and stuff like that, but none of them lived up to that hype. And I think that's been the thing, is the Saints have not had a great defensive lineman to join that front in years now. They've had linebackers come in. They've been able to fill the holes in the secondary. But the D-line has been the problem with the defense as it's gotten progressively, still very good, but progressively not as good the last couple of years.
Just a final thought before we wrap here, Blake. The only thing I'm going to say is, I understand the concerns on the injury stuff, but this whole last season, he didn't miss any time. And the only time that he did miss was because of the tragedy that happened with his sister. So I understand the injury concerns, because before that, he dealt with a lot. But he was fully healthy this year, and he was dealing with some stuff off the field. So, I think that he's past that injury concern, and I'm hoping that he is. But it's a positive sign for a guy who was in and out of injuries to be fully available this past season. Again, I think it's a weird fit for what their defensive line needs, but Bryan Bresee was the number 1 recruit in his class for a reason, and I think he's going to be a very dominant pro at the next level. David, we really appreciate you joining us, folks. Go check out Believe in Saints, and we'll see what happens for the rest of the Saints draft. David, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Pleasure, you guys.